Welcome to the first in the 2017 ICOR webinar series. In addition to launching the new ICOR webinar series, ICOR has also launched a new website, including a new URL, buildresilience.org, and a logo, along with the latest research and an update of all of our models and frameworks. I am Linda Nelson, the president of ICOR, and I will be your speaker today. This topic is one that I'm passionate about. An understanding of organizational resilience and how to increase the resilience of organizations is the cornerstone of ICOR's mission and vision. In fact, since 2006, when we first launched ICOR, the amount of knowledge and the body of knowledge and the amount of information about organizational resilience has increased in magnifold. To support ICOR's mission and vision, I volunteer as an expert member of the ISO Technical Committee 292. I've also been part of that work group writing ISO 22316, Organizational Resilience Principles and Attributes. This standard is expected to be published later this spring. This webinar will share aspects of the standard as well as other relevant research on the topic, or at least as much as can be covered in a short webinar. Our objectives today are to gain an understanding of how leadership and strategy contribute to overall organizational resilience, to learn how organizational resilience is increased when there is an intentional effort to ensure a healthy culture exists throughout the organization, also to identify strategies on how being prepared, managing risk throughout the organization, and managing change increases the resilience of the organization. We also are going to look at understanding the impact of specific behaviors on an organization's resilience. We will allow questions. You won't be able to speak during the webinar, but there is a questions button, and Tiffany will monitor the questions, and we will take the questions as they come in if needed. Otherwise, I will answer all of them at the end of the webinar. So we're going to start off with a poll. One of the things I like most about GoToWebinar is the opportunity to get your opinions and information as you start. So look at which discipline best describes your role in increasing the resilience of your organization. The poll only allows a few choices, so we combine some of the disciplines in order to reflect them all. Go ahead and make your best choice from the choices provided. Looks like about 75% of the people have voted, so we'll close the poll in just a minute.
Now, Linda, we have the results. It looks like 64% have chosen business continuity management, 36% crisis management and communications, incident response, 31% risk management includes supply chain, 21% IT, DR, ICT continuity, info security, critical environments, and 3%.
Okay, well that's really interesting. It's not surprising to me that we see a lot of business continuity people on the webinar, so welcome. And I'm also happy to see that we have a good amount of people both with the crisis management as well as the risk management as well. We're going to talk about each one of those disciplines and how they support the overall resilience of the organization. I hate to start a webinar with a definition, but this is really a key aspect of organizational resilience is the fact that there hasn't been a really good working definition, or maybe I should say there's been lots of working definitions. So depending on what discipline you're in, you may have a definition of organizational resilience. So for example, I know in the United States, the Department of Homeland Security has a definition of organizational resilience that is very infrastructure-based. And it is a great definition, but it doesn't have any, it doesn't scope out on some of the larger aspects of organization resilience that we're going to talk about today. Many of the definitions are incident-based or focused on reacting to something bad that might happen. They're also sometimes industry-based. So our intention as part of the ISO committee, a group of experts, was to expand that definition to be relevant no matter what discipline or industry it was reflecting, and also to be more than bouncing back from something bad. So notice on this definition we've got a dual focus of absorbing and adapting in a changing environment, as well as to deliver its objectives, and then not just to survive but also to prosper. So in the ISO definition of resilience, it just says the ability to absorb and adapt in a changing environment. So this idea of absorbing an impact, adapting to change, and understanding that change is happening all the time. On organizational resilience, they added the term resilience, or the word resilience. If they were talking about community resilience, it would be the ability of the community to absorb and adapt. And then the second half of the definition that we've based on from ISO 22316 is it to enable the organization to deliver its objectives, whatever those objectives are, and to survive as well as to prosper. We wanted to make sure that there was an understanding that it was more than just managing impacts, but also about prospering during a business-as-usual environment. I like to start out all presentations with some sort of a joke. I'm not great at jokes, so here's my cartoon for the morning about how a mouse might anticipate change and adapt to it quickly. I also want to take a minute to talk about managing change. Change is a small world with large implications. All through ISO 22316 and other research in organizational resilience are the concepts of successfully managing change, being a change agent, getting out in front of a potential change. Change is hard. Getting people to change takes convincing. Getting an organization to change is even more difficult. An associate of mine served in the Navy a while back, and he often shares his story about change. And he says that changing the course of a plane or an infantry unit of soldiers is not so difficult. He says, try changing the course of a Navy fleet, an aircraft carrier with all the supporting ships. Not so easy. So understand that the larger the organization, and even sometimes the longer it's been around, the more difficult it will be to manage change. So don't underestimate what change entails and the amount of strategy involved. While the word is small, the activity it represents is quite complex. And knowing the second half of this fortune cookie, not changing is fatal. If you don't change, doesn't matter how good you were last year, 5 years ago, yesterday, if you're not changing and moving forward, what you're doing is not going to be relevant in the future. So why resilience? We had some people send some questions in actually before the webinar asking how this presentation was going to deal with things like risk management and business continuity. And so I thought those were good questions. Why is resilience? Why do we need to move? Why isn't business continuity enough? Why isn't it enough to have a good ITDR program or a great data center or information security practices? Why isn't it enough just to have a great organization? Why do we need more? Well, the fact is that the world is getting riskier, and change is happening faster than it seems possible to keep up. Even if you only look at technology change, who can even keep up with that? It seems like no matter what we're doing, all of a sudden tomorrow there's something that's better than what we were using today. What was good enough in the past is no longer enough. We've seen companies like Kodak, for example, that have been in business for decades or maybe even more than 100 years, and they're failing. There's many reasons. We're going to talk about how to increase the resilience of an organization or how to make it stronger so it can meet the new risks and manage change effectively. We're going to talk about the concepts of this slide all through the webinar, but I wanted to introduce some of them to start off with because it's important to look at them individually as well. I want you to understand that there's no single strategy or solution to make an organization resilient. This is one of the biggest challenges that we faced with the ISO committee. We have people from 34 countries talking about the standard and talking about the concept of organizational resilience, and it seemed like we had 34 opinions. And in fact, the 34 opinions didn't always complement each other. So there was a lot of energy involved in creating this, this guidance document, and in fact, I still think there's a lot of energy involved in it. So understanding that there's no single strategy. Having a great business continuity program is absolutely wonderful. Having a good risk management program is very important, as well as all the other ways that you can manage risk and to make your organization stronger. They are each very important, but by themselves, they're just a piece. And resilience requires a coordinated approach. So managing change is important. We're going to talk about how building diversity, and building diversity with thought, building diversity with your leadership, diversity of knowledge, as well as diversity of skills is going to be relevant. We talked about managing risk. We're also going to talk a lot about breaking down silos. So while you might have these individual systems in place, having them in silos reduces their effectiveness. So we need to break down those silos, and we need to make sure that we're looking at a coordinated approach so that we are able to adapt and manage change as it comes by. Organizations must manage change and adapt if they're going to survive and thrive. ICOR has recently published an organizational resilience model. This model is new. It builds upon the framework that we had before, which we're also going to talk about today. And it is based on the concepts of the principles and attributes that are documented in ISO 22316, as well as other collected research. The research into attributes or indicators evident in case studies of more resilient organizations can be grouped into three major categories. We're calling them environments in the ICOR resilience model. We have leadership and strategy as the first environment, culture and behaviors is the second environment, and preparedness and managing risk is the third environment. Each environment is supported by three categories of strategies. Each strategy can be implemented on its own or in combination as part of an overall OR strategy, or organizational resilience strategy, in this case with a capital S. So your organization should have an organizational resilience strategy. What is it that we're trying to do? What are we trying to improve on? And when you do an evaluation of your organization, you can look at what are our weaknesses and what are our strengths. Do we want to build on our strengths, or do we want to improve our weaknesses? Where are they? Do we need to work at building effective leaders, increasing our availability and our different types of resources? What is it that we need to work on? And we're going to talk about each one of these individually. Then we have 16 behaviors. And these are behaviors that describe how more resilient organizations behave. These behaviors are considered to be important in preventing breakdown or failure or enabling appropriate and timely action to be taken. They distinguish a more resilient organization from one that is simply well-run, successful, or prosperous. And these have been identified in organizations that have in case study examples. So while there isn't right now a really great way that has been accepted to globally recognize and measure resilience, what they have done is identified case studies of organizations that have demonstrated an ability to be resilient under different conditions. So let's begin with looking at strategy. Leadership and strategy, and this is a capital S for strategy, meaning the overall strategy of the organization. And we know that organizational resilience is increased and enhanced when the organization demonstrates leadership qualities and intentionally implements strategies. The first aspect of this is having a shared vision and purpose. You might look at this and say, well, of course, that's kind of an duh thing. Understanding the purpose, vision, and values of the organization is very important, and everybody should have that shared vision and purpose. In fact, when you walk into many organizations, you see it, stamped on the wall or decorated in some manner. It's part of their logo or their, what they say about their organization. But the members or the employees of the organization need to clearly understand the purpose, vision, and values of the organization. Everyone needs to be moving in the same direction, working as a team, and clearly understanding how they contribute to the organization's success or failure. There should be an obvious unity of purpose. And we've seen this when an organization has an incident of some kind, and all of a sudden you see different people going off in different directions. And oftentimes this is top management going off in different directions, and they're not all moving in the same direction with the unity of purpose. I don't like the term understands context. It is kind of standardese, meaning it's language that we don't often use. But what's meant here is an understanding of both the internal and external environments of the organization. We need to understand what's happening internally and externally so we can ensure that the organization can meet all of its needs and requirements and that they are alert to change. They need to understand their partners. They need to understand what's going on outside of their organization that could impact them, as well as what's going on internally to the organization. Do you have conflict? Do you have a line of business that's doing better or worse than another line of business? And is this creating a problem within your organization? So you need to be looking internally to your organization as well as externally to your organization. And this could include, looking at risks outside your organization as well as opportunities that you might have for whatever products or services you're offering. The third aspect of leadership and strategy is having effective leaders. And I don't mean just top management. We're talking about leaders throughout the organization. And we're talking about leadership being distributed. That's really, really important. And those leaders that are distributed throughout the organization not only need to be effective, but they need to be empowered, and they need to be trusted and respected. These leaders need to be leaders that people want to follow. And leaders provide a culture where innovation and creativity is encouraged. And this is really, really important as well. Let's go ahead and take a look at some of the detail behind these strategies. So one of the strategies might be that you need to strengthen your leaders to implement a strategy. So one of the ways you can do this is to show that leaders are intentionally sought, and the leaders that you're seeking, you want them to have integrity. They need to be able to adapt to changing circumstances. I've heard stories about you have a great leader of a department or a division or part of the organization, but during an incident, that person is not the best leader to be in place. So you have to be looking at leadership from a business as usual point of view, as well as a not business as usual or during an incident or a crisis time. Your leaders need to have a diverse set of skills. There's a lot of research out there that talks about group speak, and where everybody in the room has the same set of background and skill sets and maybe even knowledge, and therefore they all come to the same conclusions. When they're not representative of the world that they're trying to sell their products and services to, and so they're not able to have a diverse set of thoughts. And this is why, even in the ISO world, it is based on consensus among an international group, because we all come from different places in the world, we all come from different backgrounds, and having that diverse set of skill sets is really, really important to making sure that you're thinking through any time that you're implementing any sort of strategy or making a decision for your organization. So your leadership needs to be diverse. They need to have diverse skill sets. They need to have a diverse knowledge base. So I'll give a business continuity example. Is when we're collecting information from a business impact analysis, you don't want to collect the information from just the same set of people. You want them to be from a multi-different levels of the organization based on what they do. So they need to have a knowledge base, and you need to have leaders that behave in a certain manner. So when HR is hiring people and you put together a proposal for what kind of person you're looking for to fill that leadership position, you need to be also looking at what sorts of behaviors will be important for that. Here's one that I go back to when I was a child, and my parents said, just do what you're told. Stop asking so many questions. It's important that leaders provide strategic direction as part of their decision making. When you understand what it is you're supposed to do and why you're supposed to do it and how it impacts the organization, you can be much more effective in implementing whatever that activity is. So we need, as leaders, to make sure that we're not just telling people what to do, but making sure that they understand what it is they're supposed to be doing and why they're supposed to be doing it, so that they can take part in that decision making as well based on what it is their roles and responsibilities are. We talked a minute ago about being innovative. Being resilient is not, again, just not about being resilient against bad things. It's also about moving your organization forward. And if you don't have a culture where you can be innovative and that people don't ask you questions about what you might think on how to improve something, you're not going to be very strong in this environment. So as a leader in your own organization, think about how you talk to the people that you work with. Are you asking them to be innovative? Are you asking them for their opinions? And are you supporting their opinions when you get it? Are you getting, when you ask for suggestions and ideas, are you actually listening to how those might be implemented? Or are you saying, no, we did that before, it didn't work? Or I don't think so, we're just going to do what I thought. So think about how it is that you manage people within your organization and how the culture of your organization supports innovation. One of the things that's really, really important is lessons learned. So in an organization, when you're looking at your internal and external context, and you're looking at what's happening around you, understanding what's happened in the past to your organization and how you've shared that information is really, really important. Is that information used to promote better practices? Are you learning from others? So maybe if something hasn't happened to your organization, you can learn from what's happened to another organization. So making sure that information is shared throughout your organization is also really important. Talking again about understanding your internal and external context or your internal and external environments, understanding who you're interdependent on, both internally and externally. What are your political, regulatory environments and competitor activities? Keeping your finger on the pulse. Are you looking and doing horizon scanning to see what's happening around you? Are you monitoring and evaluating these things in order to manage change? So understanding that what you've done yesterday is great, but what you do tomorrow is going to depend on how well you understand what's going on around you. And then again, making sure that you have understood your relationships with interested parties and that you're intentionally strengthening those relationships to foster collaboration and cooperation. So we're going to go to our next poll, and I want you to do a quick evaluation. This is nothing fancy, just a quick evaluation of how strong you think your organization is in that leadership and strategy environment.
Linda, we have more than half believe that their leadership and strategy environment is strong at 54%. 25% believe that they're very strong, 17% weak, and 4% very weak.
All right, that's really interesting. Let's see how we do on the next environment. So the second environment talks about culture and behaviors. We understand that organizational resilience is increased and enhanced when there is an intentional effort to ensure a healthy culture throughout the organization. There is an abundance of research on the importance of culture in the workplace and its impact on the success of the organization. You've all worked for a company that looked good on paper, and once there, you couldn't get away fast enough. These are the companies that are always hiring. Then you have companies where you might not make as much money, and maybe the work isn't exactly what you want to be doing, but you stay there because it's a good company to work for. Culture matters. Engaged people matter during business as usual and during a crisis or an incident. So it's really, really important to have a healthy culture. The existence of core values and behaviors that support the health and welfare of its employees, that it fosters creativity and empowers the people that work there to communicate effectively. This is real. The communication aspect of this cannot be undervalued. You saw some of the communication aspects in the leadership and strategy environment. Because leadership so much impacts culture, those two environments, the leadership and the culture pieces, are very much tied together. I have children who are just recently in the workplace, and I can see a very different workplace than I entered the workplace than they do. I mean, they can sit on exercise balls, they can stand up and work. Just the focus even on the fact that they remain healthy in the workplace is important. So having the ability to exercise at lunch, having healthy food in the cafeteria, all of these things are very different from what they were 25 years ago. I think these are an improvement, and it's going to help the organization. If people like working there, you know, you have daycare available, you have the ability to work from home, you have the ability to, you know, manipulate your hours if you need to, and have leave time or work extra hours if you want to. Having that sort of a healthy culture is very, very important to the organization and keeps it healthy so that if there is some sort of an incident, you're not going to lose those people. And I want to go back to talking about the learning piece. This idea of sharing information is also tied to what we talked about a few minutes ago with shared learning. It's really, really important that information and knowledge is shared. This is part of the communication aspect as well. How well does your organization communicate? How well is information shared? Having knowledge and information helps you to make decision-making on your own job. Learning from experience and learning from others is vitally important. And just learning itself, is that recognized as a critical resource of the organization? Do they train you? Are you able to attend and get better at your job by attending conferences and, you know, webinars like this? Are you able to, do they invest in your future? Are you able to develop professionally? All of this is meaning that information and knowledge is recognized as a critical resource. A culture that values learning over blame is also really important. This means that you are able to, let me give an example of this. I gave a presentation quite a few years ago at the World Conference for Disaster Management in Toronto. It's a great conference. And I was giving a talk about culture. And after the talk, a woman came up to me and she said that she just had a really big decision to make. She had made a mistake. And that mistake could have cost her company a lot of money. However, she'd fixed the mistake. So she'd corrected it. It was fixed. However, she knew that that same thing could happen again. It wasn't, she hadn't fixed the cause of the mistake. She had just corrected the mistake that she made, but she knew that someone else could make that mistake in the future. She wanted to go to management and explain what had happened and how she'd corrected it and to let them know that they were vulnerable in this area. But she was afraid if she did that she would lose her job. So think about the culture of your organization. Does your culture value learning over blame? Are you able to go to management or go to your boss and talk about if you see a problem or you have made a mistake, to share that information and use it as a learning experience versus something that you're going to have to take the consequences for? And it's really, really important in part of your culture, this idea of continually improvement, because this ties very much to this sharing of information and learning as knowledge, being able to learn from experience and decision making. Are we trying to get better every year? Are you trying to improve your products and services every year? And it's not just about meeting the next quota for your sales piece, but are you actually able to provide a better product so that it is able to sell? So how does your organization do that, and how well does it do that? And how well is this idea of continual improvement part of the culture of your organization? So building a culture that ensures the organization behaves in a healthy manner includes many of the things that we've just talked about. So this is another figure that talks about that. Does your organization act in a way that's trustworthy? Does it have loyalty and respect? Are the people that work for it engaged and empowered? This idea of employee engagement, by the way, is almost as big as the word change. Having people engaged and wanting to work with the organization and move it forward is really, really important. This concept of regular and open communication, committed to improving. Are we going to get better every year? How can we do that? Are we going to take ideas from our people? Or is it just, one top management group that's responsible for all the improvement? How is creativity and innovation fostered? Are people allowed to be creative and share their ideas? And how, again, is learning and knowledge shared? So thinking on that, let's go to our next poll, and I'd like you to rate the level of strength you think your organization has in the culture and behaviors environment.
So we have 49% believe that they have a strong level of culture and behavioral environment, and very strong is 26%.
Oh, very interesting. It looks like the two environments ended up with pretty similar results on that. So given the jobs of many of you attending today, you're probably the most familiar with the category preparedness and managing risk. And my guess is that when you get to the poll on this one, you're probably going to score the highest. But we do know that organizational resilience is increased and enhanced when the organization intentionally manages risk and prepares for the unexpected. We are specifically looking at how the organization ensures that it has adequate resources as well. So we're going to talk about resources first and foremost. Back when I was actually a business continuity consultant a long, long time ago, and one of the things I just remember seeing in a business continuity plan was that they signed off on their business continuity plan, but with the exception of saying, well, we can do all these things if we have the resources to do them. And that really drew a question to my eye when I was looking at that plan. We're talking about resources here with organizational resilience of people. We're talking about having adequate equipment, as well as having enough money to do whatever it is that you're supposed to be doing. And looking at your resources as being adequate and also available when you need them, and making sure that the resources that you have the ability to adapt to changing circumstances. So we know that when we write crisis plans or we do risk mitigation and we try to put things in place, we know that the things that we've put in place probably aren't going to, the things that's going to happen to us are not going to be exactly what we've imagined that they would be. And so making sure that whatever resources you've put in place, they're able to be adapted. We talk about managing risk. And this is where we've got the concept of effectively managing risk and risk management. So I would argue that there are many, many disciplines that support the management of risk throughout the organization, and that you need to also effectively manage that risk. So we're talking about it as an activity and also as a system. So one of those ways to effectively manage risk is to use management systems. And there's about a dozen management systems that look at an organization, and that could be anywhere from a quality management system to an information security management system, to one that deals with your information technology, to even food safety. There's all sorts of management systems out there that deal with different ways to make the organization function better or at a higher level. Each of those looks at risk through a different lens. Each of those looks at risk from a different aspect. So it is important when we're looking at how to manage risk, that we do this in a way that eliminates silos and in a way that's best for the organization. The third aspect of this environment is, of course, managing change. Where would we be with that? Because we talked about change a lot. This idea that you need to be able to anticipate, plan for, and respond to changing circumstances as well as incidents. So it isn't just about managing incidents, it's also about managing change. And this idea of anticipating, we talked about the concept of horizon scanning, or looking forward to what's to come. What is the next thing on the horizon? What are our competitors doing? What are our partners doing? What regulatory things are coming in the future? What do we need to be ready for, so when it happens, or when these things are implemented, that we're ready and we're not responding to it? Or maybe we want to get things ready ahead of time so that that change doesn't impact us as much. So the concept here is that you need to strengthen your systems to effectively manage risk throughout the organization, and that by doing that, that's also going to help you to effectively manage change. So ICOR's organizational resilience framework has been updated from its initial design in 2007. So just like any other organization, ICOR had to look at what do we need to do, what do we need to update within our own organization so that we can stay ahead of what everybody else is doing. And we also wanted to be able to make sure that what we have implemented reflects all the things that have happened since 2007 in the research of organizational resilience. So let me note some of the changes that we have here. Business continuity was also merged to continuity of operations. So originally we had emergency management, and we were focusing on continuity of operations in what we call the public sector or in the government sector. So we have merged those two because we see them as the same activity, just implemented within a different type of organization. Our crisis management and communication stayed the same. We took our facility management discipline and we divided that out to critical environments, so mostly focusing on things like data centers, things that need to operate 24/7 that are heavily tied to technology. We also added a discipline. We had 10 disciplines before, now we have 12. We added a discipline called financial health and viability. This idea that your business as usual activities need to be strong. It cannot just be risk-based. So while our organizational resilience framework does look at risk throughout the organization, it's also looking at how financially healthy and viable are you. Are your products and services going to be able to be sold? Are you in a marketplace that allows those to be effective? We also took the term social resilience and changed it to human resource management. It is essentially the same content within that discipline, but we found that people didn't have a great understanding of social resilience, so we just changed the terminology there. We also took our technology infrastructure discipline and split it into two, and we named one aspect of it ICT continuity, so information communication technology, so it's more than IT. And we're talking about the continuity of your information and communications technology, not just, quote, the disaster recovery. We hope that the term disaster recovery will go away at some time in the future. We're not hopeful, but we don't think it will happen soon, but we are hopeful. And then we also took the second half of the technology infrastructure discipline and added information security, which has become a much bigger focus since 2007. The last 10 years have completely changed our vulnerability on the information security aspect. We also added incident response, so how you initially respond to an incident of any kind as its own discipline. Legal audit and compliance remain the same. Organizational behavior, we have kept the name the same, but we've changed some of the aspects to align to the current research and add to that. Risk management has stayed the same, and the supply chain has stayed the same. So we opened the webinar with discussing the importance of eliminating silos and effectively managing risk throughout the organization. As I mentioned, the disciplines reflected in this framework all contribute to increasing an organization's resilience. So this is where you most often see the personnel representing an individual discipline stating that if you implement whatever, our organization will be resilient. And I want to be careful of the word be resilient or we are resilient. There's no absolute measure of resilience. That's the one thing that I think we have learned the most in the last 10 years, and that is resilience is part of a continuum. We can be stronger, we can be weaker, we can work on things to make it enhanced, to make it increased level of resilience, but even levels are going to be tricky to do, and I'm going to show you some benchmarking tools that have been done by a university in New Zealand that help you to do some measurements, but I do want you to understand that resilient, you're not going to be able to get an absolute measure. You're not going to like, or we are now resilient. You can say we have a very, very strong communication system. We are very, very good at managing risk. We are, our IT systems are very, very strong. We have a great culture, but it isn't, you have to understand that it isn't just one thing or the other. And so ICOR's position is supported by the international community that each discipline plays a critical role, but it's when they're implemented as a framework working together as one system where you're going to see the greatest impact. It's also important to note that this is only one of the 3 environments of the OR model. Being prepared and managing risk is just as important as having a healthy culture and having a strong leadership and strategy. Organizations fail for many reasons, and not just because they were severely impacted by a crisis. And in fact, some of the case study organizations that we've looked at that have shown and demonstrated time after time to be very resilient have never actually had a huge, quote, business continuity or risk incident. So we have to understand that it is more than just managing risk, but managing risk is an essential element, is one of the 3 aspects. So let's take our last poll. Rate your organization's level of strength in the preparedness and managing risk environment.
So Linda, looks like about 57% believes that their organization is strong in this area, 19% very strong, and 21% weak.
Now that's really interesting because I just made a guess that I thought that most of you would score your organization as very strong. And it looks like for the 3 different polls, it seems like we had pretty similar results between very strong, strong, weak, and very weak. So that is really interesting. I know there were a couple of questions that came in, and I think I'll address a couple of them. I meant to say when we started the webinar that this webinar is being recorded, and you will be able to view it on our website. So if you just go to our webinars page, and I'll show that page at the end of when we're finished here, that you'll be able to download the presentation from there and view it again. I also, if you're looking for references and things, I'm going to show you where you can see that to help you with some of the information that we've shared today. So to look at the last part of the model, I want you to look at the different behaviors. And we could have come up with 100 different behaviors or 5 main behaviors, but these were the behaviors that we've been observed in more resilient organizations as part of the case study work. And these behaviors are considered to be important in preventing breakdown or failure or enabling appropriate and timely action to be taken. They distinguish a more resilient organization from one that is simply well-run, successful, or prosperous. And like I said, there could be more, there could be less. These are just the ones that we have seen repeated over and over. So when we're looking at the different pieces of research, and when we looked at the ISO 22316 standard, these were the behaviors that we saw described in those different pieces of work. So I'm going to do a summary of the presentation, then I'm going to take you to a couple of websites that I think will be helpful to you. I just want you to, just to summarize the webinar, that organizations can only be more or less resilient. There is no absolute measure or definitive goal. There's also no single approach to increasing your resilience. So you can look at the different ways of doing it, you can look at different ideas, and you can develop your own strategy for your organization. Organizational resilience is a strategic activity supported by operational factors. And what I mean by this is that it really is something that's a top management or senior management function. It is not something that can necessarily be done from the ground up. It's a big S strategy, and it has to, when you're looking at eliminating silos between different disciplines in your organization, that's a huge thing. Think about your organization in just two aspects: your business continuity program and your IT DR program. Are they merged? Are they part of the same system? Are they working independently? How about your crisis management program? Is that connected to your business continuity program, or is it separate? When there's changes made in the supply chain and they have a supply chain strategy, is that conversation reflected in the overall risk, looking at it from a risk appetite piece? And how does that tie to your business continuity strategies? How does that, what does that do to the financial aspects? A lot of times supply chain decisions are made based on financial aspects, and they haven't considered some of the other aspects and how it impacts the organization. Also understand that if your business isn't very good at doing business, they're not going to be very resilient. So number one, organizational resilience is an outcome of good business practice. You have to be doing your business well or conducting your business well in order to be in any manner being able to be resilient, and it is also tied to managing risk. So a commitment to increasing resilience contributes to an increased ability to anticipate and manage change, and resulting in a stronger adaptive capacity. So being able to adapt and modify and not always doing the same thing the same way every time, no matter the outcome. So there's several references, and I'm going to go to several of these. Number one, the standard will be published in the spring. It's under what they call a final draft, so it's being voted on in April. I'm going to take you to our website to show you some additional sources. And I'd suggest you buy this book. You can get it on Amazon.com. I have no stake in this book, but I have read it. I have been working with Erica Seville for about 10 years. The work that she's been doing at the University of Canterbury is fantastic. She's got a great team, and that work has grown. And I believe it's probably some of the best research on organizational resilience that's out there. And I'm going to show you some of the tools that they have developed. So first thing I wanted to do is, you can on our new website, by the way, buildresilience.org. We still have the ICOR.org, and everything will be forwarding shortly. We're in the process of really launching our new website. We have changed to buildresilience.org because this is who we are and what we're doing. We've changed our logo, and we've really done everything over again on our website. So while we have some of the similar frameworks, they have been changed. So on this model, which you can get to by just clicking on Resilience Frameworks, you have an opportunity to look at different things that are out there. So for example, if you want to look at how to improve my culture, we've got all sorts of articles and websites that you can go to read more about this. If you want to look at how to improve your leadership, there's again lots and lots of articles, white papers, research papers, and websites that you can go to. A lot of case studies as well. We've taken a lot of this from the book on resilient organizations that I just shared with you, as well as some of the others. If you're looking for more information on the model itself, we have given you some definitions, and we've defined what we mean by each of the behaviors. And so this is where we've posted that. The other place, so the resilient organizations, the URL is RES.org, so just resilienceorg.org. It is in New Zealand. They've got a lot of really interesting things, so you can look at their different research that they've done. A lot of their research has been updated from all of the earthquakes that they've had there in recent years. So I want to give you a couple of examples of what you can use from their website. So they've got a benchmark resilience tool. It is a PDF that you can download. Now, one of the things that they tell you here is that if you want to use their tool, it was created for academic purposes. It is free, but they ask you to please fill out the application form. So they want to know who's using the tool, and they just want to know how you're going to use it. You know, you don't have to, but they do, since they have put this together and it's been funded by the government, they are just asking for you to please fill out the application form. So they've got, it's a PDF tool that you can use, and they've got different versions, and again, they ask you to not to use it without prior permission. They give you some definitions, and then they have the basic information about what your company is, and then they go and they look at different resilience indicators. Now, their three environments are a little bit different than ICOR's, but the two of them are very complementary. So their resilience thumbprint tool is essentially going to be like more of a cut-down version of their benchmark tool. So their thumbprint tool would be something if you just wanted to do something really quick in a, maybe you're doing a presentation to management or something, and you just want to do a quick, let's see how we do, and you can do it in 5 minutes. So that would be this one. This one, the benchmarking tool, is going to take you a little bit longer. They also have one that's been developed for employees to help you measure the resilience of your employees. They can be done as a self-assessment. You can use it as a organization-wide employee resilience assessment, as well as anything else you want to do with it. And the last one is what is called the Resilience Health Check tool. This tool is complementary to the benchmark resilience tool, so I would recommend doing all of these. But I think understanding that the benchmark tool and the health check tool are complementary to each other, and it's really to be used as a catalyst for teams to reflect and discuss how they measure against each of the 13 indicators. So our model has, and the standard has 12 things. They have 13. Let me show you. Give you a quick look as to, it is I believe this is an online tool versus a PDF. So their three categories or three environments that they're calling them their attributes would be leadership and culture, network and partnerships, and change readiness. A little bit different, but when you look at all of what's inside of it, it's very complementary to what the ISO world has put together and what ICOR's model has done. So I recommend that you go and take a look at their website and ask for permission to use their tools. It's a great place. They've also got a lot of their case studies published there, so it's a really good place to go. And I ordered this book from Amazon, and I got it in like 4 or 5 days. So it's a quick read. It's all case study based, so it's really interesting because you can learn from what other organizations have done. Just want to invite you to our continuing series. We're really excited to be able to launch our 2017 webinar series. It is something new for us, and they're mostly on Wednesdays, with the exception of April. We have it moved to a Thursday. The webinars will be available on demand on our website, so if you just click on the webinars link on our website, you'll be able to access that. After 30 days, we'll be moving it to our Resilience Research Center, which used to be called our library, and it'll be available for you on demand whenever you would like it after that. So, Tiffany, any questions that I need to answer?
There is one question. How diverse is a behavior, or how is diverse a behavior?
What is a diverse behavior? Or I'm not sure of the question. Let me see. Don't know the answer to that. So maybe just send me an email. I should have actually put my email up there. It's just linda@theicor.org, or click on any of the contact us links on the website and we can get back to you. I saw one other question about the NIST Community Resilience Guide. how it relates to ICOR. So let me show you, I'm going to answer that by just showing you something on our website. So bear with me here for a second. So I have sat on the NIST in the meetings that I have contributed. So the NIST Community Resilience Framework is very much infrastructure-based. So they are looking at what we would call the systems. So how well the water and the treatment plants work, how well the buildings themselves function in the community. So we have included a lot of the NIST work here. So we look at, and the next webinar next month is going to be about the Community Resilience Framework, and I can talk more about that. But we have looked at these 5 systems, and so we've included some of the NIST research, and I'm not sure. So it may be, here's the Community Resilience Task Force recommendations by DHS. I know that we link to some of the, so here's your NIST Guides 1 and 2, Community Resilience Planning Guide for Buildings and Infrastructure. So we have incorporated the work that's been done by NIST into the work that we are trying to do here to try to summarize. Because just like organizational resilience, you're looking at the different disciplines and how you can increase your resilience by looking at specific areas. That's the same way community resilience is looking at. Everybody's looking at the community. How can we make the environment healthier? How can we make sure that our community's resilient against flooding? There's all sorts of ways to look at it. And so this framework is combining all the work done from those different disciplines. Another question is, are you going to offer ISO 22301 individual certifications? We actually do. We have the ISO 22301 lead implementer, and that is for individuals. They can either just challenge the exam if they're very familiar with the standard and they understand business continuity, or you can take our BCM 2000, 3000. It's either e-learning or live, and you can take the exam as part of the course. We also we do credential organizations. Let me remove the questions there. That is part of our self-declaration of conformity. So organizations can self-declare their conformity to 22301, which is different from an individual. So just throwing that out there. Any other questions? All right, we thank you very much for coming, and we invite you to attend our webinar next month. And there will be a survey coming out in the next hour. We ask you to please participate in the survey so that we can know what you liked, what you'd like us to do differently as we move on to our next survey. So thank you very much, and have a great rest of the day.